PC gaming can be full of pitfalls, but you don't have to fall into them because I've compiled this list of common PC issues and how to resolve them and even avoid them in the first place. So now you don't have to make these mistakes and you can have a much better and much more optimized PC gaming experience. Before I get into the video, there's no tips with the PC building process here. It's all for after the PC has been built. But if you want to see that in a video, let me know by dropping a comment down below. But just because a PC's been built, it doesn't mean you're out of the woods yet. And this video is more directed for new PC gamers who have just built or bought a pre-built gaming PC. So let's get straight into the video. The first tip up today isn't necessarily an essential one, but put it this way, I think your ears are going to thank you, and that is setting your case fans' fan curves. Because out of the box, most motherboards tend to have a very bad fan curve and it ramps up and down, and this is super annoying. So luckily, if you've got a 3 or 4 pin fan like this one here, you can adjust the speeds and the RPMs in your motherboard's BIOS or in software in Windows. Personally, I just like to use the BIOS as it's kind of a set and forget thing, and ever since you set it, it's basically going to be totally fine. So depending on what your case configuration is like, maybe you've got more of a airflow oriented case here, you can lower the RPM and have quieter operation while maintaining airflow. Or if your case is a bit more, let's say not airflow optimized, you can raise the RPMs here and you can get the same amount of airflow, but the fans will be going faster. So depending on your needs, set your fan curves accordingly. One tip I do recommend though is slightly changing the RPM per fan. What this will do is it will make your PC much quieter, as if all of your fans are at the exact same RPM, this will intensify the sound and it will make your PC basically sound like a jet fighter. So that's why this tip isn't necessarily essential, but it's certainly nice to do, as a quiet PC is basically a good PC. An extra tip I'd recommend is adjusting your GPU's fan curves in software like MSI Afterburner, particularly if you've got a Founders Edition NVIDIA graphics card. My RTX 3080 will cook itself to death at 80 degrees C, even with an undervolt, while the fans are really quiet. So I set a custom fan curve in MSI Afterburner, and now it's running in the high 60s. Yeah, it's a bit louder, but I'd rather have a loud GPU than one that's running way too hot. This one's a bit of a classic. So you built your gaming PC and you're so eager to get into Windows and start playing games, you forget this one crucial setting, and that is XMP. And why this one is so important is because that fancy memory kit you bought with the fast speeds and the tight timings, that is basically useless without this setting, because default out of the box DDR5 resorts to 4800 MHz and DDR4 resorts to 2133. To get the advertised speeds on your memory kit, you need to enable XMP, or on AMD motherboards, Expo. And what XMP and Expo do is bump up the memory speeds and tighten the timings to the advertised spec. This is technically an overclock, so your mileage may vary, but a general rule of thumb is 3200 MHz CL16 for DDR4 will be fine on all platforms, and 6000 MHz CL30 should be fine on all DDR5 platforms as well. But as I said, your mileage may vary. So now that this is enabled, you get the faster speeds and tighter timings, which you've already paid for, and this should benefit you in CPU bound workloads. So if you're an esports gamer, you will see a difference in performance, and if you're a content creator as well, so you do a lot of video editing, you will see performance improvements here as well. Speaking of forgetting things, I've seen plenty of people get brand new high refresh rate monitors and forget this one crucial setting. And I've actually seen it happen quite a lot with streamers as well, so it's no surprise that quite a lot of people do miss out on this. And that is getting a high refresh rate monitor and forgetting to select the according refresh rate. Yes, a lot of people have bought high refresh rate monitors and left them at like 60 Hz. And 9 times out of 10, that's what the refresh rate is going to be in Windows, as it doesn't automatically change a lot of the time. In some cases it can, and yeah, it kind of just depends down to which monitor you've got. Regardless, To enable the highest refresh rate on your monitor, go into your Windows settings, then display, then advanced display, and select the highest refresh rate available. For my monitor here, it's 144Hz, but depending on which panel you've got, it might be different. So just check with which monitor you've got and select the highest refresh rate available. This can also be done in your GPU's control panel, but to be honest, I recommend just doing it through Windows settings. It's way easier and quicker that way. So to all you gamers out there saying that 60Hz and 144Hz, there's absolutely no difference between them, this is probably why you're saying that, because you're still gaming at 60Hz. So don't make this mistake. Also, if you've got a high refresh rate monitor, odds are it's got some form of adaptive sync. By default, this isn't usually enabled depending on which monitor you've got, but if it's a G-Sync certified monitor, one that's actually been certified by NVIDIA, 9 times out of 10 this will automatically be enabled. But to enable it manually in the GeForce control panel, it is under Setup G-Sync, and you select the monitor and you enable G-Sync for either full screen or full screen, windowed and windowed borderless applications. Usually I'll just leave it on full screen as that's how I run most of my games anyway. For AMD in the Radeon software, it's under Gaming, Display and then AMD FreeSync. And for you Intel Arc GPU owners, it's under Display and Global in the Intel Arc control software. And the reason why you want Adaptive Sync installed is because it dynamically changes the refresh rate according to the frame rate that you've got. And what this does is it reduces screen tearing, input lag, and it will also reduce micro stutters as well. So it's just an overall much better and more pleasant gaming experience. This one ties into the previous point, and that is enabling VSync. Please don't enable this, because on the surface it does sound like it's a good feature, because what it does is it reduces screen tearing, but the way it does it is very archaic and it's basically obsolete thanks to adaptive sync. That is because VSync will lock the frame rate to your monitor's refresh rate, but this will introduce a ton of input lag, and if you're an esports gamer, you're not going to want this enabled, and if you're just even playing like a story game, 9 times out of 10 you're not going to want VSync. And as I said, this is basically obsolete now, as I would wager in 2024 you'd probably have a somewhat decent gaming monitor, and basically every monitor released now has adaptive sync enabled, or somewhat present at least. Even those cheap 75Hz panels, they have adaptive sync, so there's basically no point in using VSync at all. The only good scenario with VSync that I can think of is if you're playing a game and the 1% lows are just all over the place and the performance is absolutely horrid. If you wanted to lock the frame rate to your monitor's refresh rate, that would be a viable way to do it, I suppose. But then again, you can always lock the frame rate in an application like Reaver Tuner, which is something that I'd rather do as opposed to enabling VSync. So yeah, long story short, don't enable VSync because it's not very good at all. So you've just gotten around to booting your PC for the first time, but it's not displaying out an image. To be honest, if I were you, I wouldn't worry too much, because you could have made this simple mistake. If you plugged your display cable into the back of your motherboard, which is above the graphics card in most cases, this could result in a display not being shown. So what I'd recommend, and it's a pretty easy fix, is to move your display cable, whether it's HDMI or DisplayPort, into the back of your GPU. Usually the graphics card lies like this in a case, and you want to plug it into, obviously, your graphics card and not your motherboard. When you first get a PC, this is a pretty easy mistake to make. Thankfully though, it's a very easy fix if that is indeed the cause of your black screen. But I can hear you in the comments asking already, why do motherboards have display ports on them? And that is because of integrated graphics, because with integrated graphics the only way of displaying out is through the motherboard, so that's why that exists. So yeah, this is probably a pretty easy mistake to make for first time PC builders, but it's definitely one you can learn from, and thankfully it's a harmless mistake. So with these tips and the solutions to go with them, hopefully your PC gaming experience is a lot more optimized and generally a lot better. Admittedly, this video was for newer PC gamers, just to get them started off on the right foot on their PC gaming journey. So if you want to see some more PC tips, there will be a video up there, and I'll catch you in the next one.